Okay, next we are going to talk about the Residential Tenancies Act. So I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly because you can get more of these details later, and they're not going to be essential to your search for accommodations to begin with. So the Residential Tenancies Act is a law, and it gives landlords specific rights and responsibilities. It provides rules for increasing rent or evicting tenants, and it creates something called the Landlord Tenant Board, which is like a court, it's a tribunal. So next we're going to talk about the Landlord and Tenant Board. So what the Landlord and Tenant Board is that tribunal. It's kind of like a court that informs landlords and tenants about their rights and responsibilities under the Residential Tenancies Act, which is, I'll call it the RTA, and it resolves disputes between tenants through mediation, adjudication, or just by providing information. So they can make decisions about whether or not a landlord can evict a tenant, and they make decisions about disputes between landlords and tenants should those disputes happen. Most of the time, you will never have any interactions with the Landlord and Tenant Board. It's very rare, but it's just good to know about in case you find yourself in that situation. So next, we're going to talk about, does the RTA apply to me? So if you share a kitchen or bathroom with the landlord or a member of the landlord's family, you are not covered by the Residential Tenancies Act. So please be aware of that, because this means that for a lot of students, if they live in a home and they share a bathroom or kitchen with the people who own the home, then the law that I'm going to discuss right now, it doesn't apply to you. So please make sure you understand whether or not you're in this situation. For more information, seek legal advice around whether or not your accommodations would fall under this act. Next, tenant rights. So under the law in Ontario, you have the right to security of tenancy. So this means you can continue to live in your rental unit until you give the landlord proper notice, the landlord and you agree that you can move, or your landlord gives you notice to end your tenancy for reasons that are allowed under the Residential Tenancies Act. Next, right to privacy. Your landlord can only enter your rental unit for the reasons allowed under the Act. Usually your landlord must give you 24 hours notice. It should be written notice before entering your unit. There are exceptions in the case of emergency. For example, fire, a pipe burst, flooding, something like that. Those are extremely rare. Next, tenant responsibilities. You need to pay your rent on time, you need to keep your unit clean, and you need to repair any damage caused by you or your guests, whether on purpose or by just not being careful enough. Note, you're not allowed to have the locks changed without the permission of the landlord. Next, choosing to end your tenancy. If you're on a fixed term, so if you're within that 12-month period of a 12-month lease, that's what fixed term means, then you need to give at least 60 days notice before the end of the lease. The termination date cannot be before the last day of the end of the fixed term. So it can't be before the end of your lease unless you otherwise agree on that. If you don't give notice and you're on a 12-month lease, the landlord assumes that the rental continues. So please be aware of that. If you've lived in a place for more than a 12-month lease, then you can pay, and you're paying rent month to month, you can give 60 days notice. So for more about this, please go online to CLEO, Community Legal Education Ontario, or talk to a licensed legal professional. Next, landlord rights. So they have the right to collect a rent deposit, but it cannot be more than last month's rent, and they should not be collecting a deposit that's sometimes referred to as a damage deposit. That's actually not legal under the Residential Tenancies Act, and that deposit that you do pay should just be used for pay last month's rent, so please be aware of that. Next, the landlord does have the right to increase rent. So this is limited by special rules. So they can't just increase your rent suddenly by like $150 or by 50% of your total rent. There are specific rules. So if your landlord gives you notice that your rent is going to increase, it should be at least 90 days notice, and it shouldn't be a massive increase. So if your landlord is telling you they're going to increase your rent and you're not sure whether or not it's legally permitted, talk to a legal professional, and also you can come talk to me, the International Transition Coordinator, for basic information about this. All right, next, we're going to talk about landlord responsibilities. So they have to keep the rental property in a good state of repair, and they have to obey basic health and safety and maintenance standards, including making sure that there's smoke detectors in the house. They need to provide you with a written copy of your tenancy agreement within 20 days after you signed it. Ideally though, you should try to get your lease or your tenancy agreement right after you sign it. That is the most ideal scenario. Next, landlords cannot shut off or interfere with supply of vital services such as your water. They cannot take your personal property if you don't pay rent or if you're late on paying rent. They cannot lock you out of your rental unit unless your landlord has an eviction order through the Landlord and Tenant Board and the sheriff comes to your rental unit to enforce it. So if you are renting an apartment, they can't just tell you leave tomorrow. The process for an eviction takes a few steps, and usually one of the steps will involve a hearing, so you have to go to an appointment at the Landlord and Tenant Board. Again, this is very specific information that you probably, hopefully, will never need to know or use, but just know that when it comes to being asked to leave the unit, it's not like your landlord, if you're renting an apartment, can send you an email saying leave tomorrow. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your landlord is either hinting or directly saying they need you to move out prior to the end of your lease, then please make sure you seek out legal advice through the Legal Protection Plan. Your landlord cannot insist that you pay rent by post-dated checks or an automatic debit. So that's another thing. Next. So there are reasons they can end a tenancy: not paying your rent in full, causing damage, disturbing other tenants, or illegal activity. So those are reasons they could evict you that are considered for cause. There are other reasons that are maybe not your fault, they could evict you as well. So next, we'll talk about other reasons. So if they plan to do major repairs and renovations that require a building permit, then the work cannot be done unless the unit is empty. That's a reason they could ask you to leave. If they are wanting to live in the unit themselves, or have a member of their family move in, or if they sell the home and the person who bought the home wants to move in or have their family move in, they could ask you to leave for those reasons. And those are nothing to do with you, they're not your fault, but they are legally permitted reasons why a landlord can ask you to leave that have nothing to do with you. Next, Legal Protection Plan. So I mentioned this a few times, but under your CSI Health and Dental Plan, there is access to a free helpline where you can access advice around many different areas of law, and you can also get representation in the areas of housing, employment, or academic concerns. So for more information about the Legal Protection Plan, you can just search the CSI Health and Dental Plan website, and you'll get more information about this at orientation as well. Just know that there's legal help that's available to you. All right, next, remember, you should start your housing search as soon as possible. It takes time, and it does take a lot of, sometimes a fair bit of energy to find a place that suits you, but there's help available and guidance if you're looking for something. Make sure you're contacting landlords directly to find housing, and maybe not just putting general messages out on Facebook groups. I do see a lot of that. And maybe you will get some helpful leads if you put out messages on Facebook groups, but that's not the most effective way to look for housing. You have to be contacting landlords directly and booking appointments. Ask questions if you're not sure. You can contact me, Kendra, through International Transition at conestogac.on.ca. And keep in mind that it takes time and effort, but I know you can do it, and you'll be very proud of yourself once you have.